Hi, this is Black Krishna or BK for manfulwars.com, where I'm promoting polite patriotism to help nice ladies and gents teach kids to be, to help us look, talk, and feel great, and to help us locally discuss and share great online info offline as better people making better places to live. There's a lot of online censorship, digital ghettos, people talking to each other with like minds. So you're just kind of speaking in little groupthink circles. And there's sort of confused civilians and pissed off patriots. And yet, polite patriotism can help us connect and inform and empower each other, and that can pay some serious dividends. So check out manforwars.com for more on that. But this video is called David Menzies, Robo-Cops, Protesters Who Yell But Can't Talk Make You One Too, and What Can You Do? Fair enough? So, breaking this down bit by bit. David Menzies is a reporter for Rebel News, formerly Rebel Media. It's a great independent Canadian media organization that covers Canadian news, American news, and even international news, sending reporters to Hong Kong, to England, to the Middle East, and other places. So they do a great job, run by Ezra Levant. They are unfortunately one of Canada's only significant independent media organizations, and that's why Canada is a lot further behind when it comes to nationalism and defending our country and making sure people are informed and empowered, and they choose the right politicians to put into power to preserve our country's heritage and economic and cultural sovereignty and borders and so on. So it's a shame that there aren't more, and there should be more, and hopefully there will be more soon. But for now, Rebel News, Rebel Media does a great job. A couple of others like True North do a great job. Pressfortruth.ca does a great job, but they're a little bit smaller, and so Rebel News is kind of the big one. And David Menzies is a bit of a shit disturber, a big, tall, jocular white guy. He's not afraid to mix it up. He's not a young man. He's sort of a middle-aged guy, but he's a very spirited interviewer, and he's not afraid to mix it up. He doesn't pull punches in his interviews. He can be funny, he can be charming, he can be ballsy, and so he seems like a good guy. I don't always agree with everything he says or everything he does, just like nobody always agrees with everybody, or we'd all be corporate clones or commie zombies. But still a good guy. And so David Menzies, recently in Toronto, Canada, went to a protest. And at this protest, there were a number of people, about 200 or so, that were protesting outside the U.S. Embassy in Toronto. And they were protesting against the death of Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general who was allegedly responsible for a bunch of terrorist attacks and other sort of military attacks outside of Iran, destabilizing the region, including causing the deaths of American soldiers, among others. But he's also been said to do some good things, like he helped get rid of ISIS in Iraq, and so there's sort of a mixed bag there when you're part of these military operations. And there was about 200 people protesting his death, saying the U.S. was wrong for killing him, and there's about a smaller group. He didn't say the number, but a smaller group of people protesting that protest, saying no, it is good that the U.S. killed him. He was a bad guy. He didn't only do bad things to people outside of Iran. He was part of a power structure in Iran that represses the Iranian, the Persian people. And so it's good that he's gone, and we need to get rid of more bad people in charge in Iran so the Iranian people can have their freedom and can choose leaders that better represent them. While he was there, David was trying to ask some questions of all these protesters, and he was getting into it with some of the protesters, and a lot of these protesters, they were there. There was a couple of hundred of them. They had a bunch of big signs. They had pictures of Qasem Soleimani. They were holding him up. They were chanting things, yelling things, making a big scene in public in the middle of Toronto around 6 p.m. And so obviously they had things to say. Obviously, they were making a big racket in public. Obviously, they were passionate to come out in the cold in the winter in Toronto to make a big scene and make a big deal out of this. So obviously, they should know what they're talking about and they should be happy to talk. However, like many other protesters, and this is across the board, this is Iranian protesters protesting the death of Soleimani. Uh, um, this is anti-Trump protesters. This is climate change protesters. This is protesters in general. A lot of protesters can yell, but they can't talk. They can yell, they can scream, they can make a big scene, but they can't actually have a good conversation about what they believe in with people who, especially if they disagree, right? They tend to not trust that. Whereas other people can, right? Other people can. Other activists, other journalists, independent media people, they're happy to. Or even, say, Christians on the street, you know, who are out there trying to share the word with people who want to listen. They'll talk to people who disagree with them, and they'll talk to people who whatever, and they can mix it up like that because they're not afraid to, right? Um, and this is the problem with the protest model. The protest model is often astroturfed, which basically means a lot of fake people there, a lot of people paid to be there, invited to be there, offered money to be there, or free food to be there, or there because they're part of a social group that believes these things. But they're not people that are actually sort of informed and empowered and can inform and empower you. They're often people that are there to make a scene, you know, where it's not facts over feelings, it's feelings over facts. And because I feel this way, and because I'm making a big stink, and because I'm bitching about something, then you have to respect that. And if you challenge that, then I'll feel even worse, and I won't talk to you. And there's lots and lots of evidence of this, lots of videos of this. I've been to protests myself where I've tried to interview people. There's been a few hundred people there. And a lot of the protesters will say, "Oh, you got to talk to our spokesperson." And I'm like, "Cool, I'm cool. I'm from this radio show that I'm working at or wherever I'm doing, and I'm and I'm totally fine with talking to the spokespeople. But the rest of you, obviously, are devoting your time to come out here. You're devoting your energy. You're saying you believe in this cause. Why the hell can't you talk?" And it's, "You got to talk to our protest or our spokesperson." Right? And it's not even like a key significant interview, like you're interviewing with a major television network or a major newspaper, right? It's just little independent journalist, independent media company wants to talk to average Joe and Jane protester about how they feel about what they're making a big stink about. And and he ran into, you know, he did manage to talk to a few people, but they quickly shut him down. They got upset because they realized that he was questioning them. And as I said before, David can be he can be very charming and very tactful and very smooth and very funny, but he can also be very abrasive. He's got kind of a 3D picture of what a typical Canadian, you know, proud, confident, big old white guy is supposed to act like, right? He's not a wimp, he's not a jerk, but he, you know, he can be really smooth and charming, or he can be a bit jerky and try and jerk your chain a bit. So, not blaming him when it comes to this, but I will say that that, you know, he was definite in terms of kind of the sort of modern gotcha YouTube video style where you're trying to push buttons until you can get something clickbait or video worthy or something that'll go viral, and you can try and poke people until they spit out something that'll go viral on the internet, as opposed to more traditional sort of activism before the internet where you weren't trying to do that. You were really trying to have a good conversation with people, and you were trying to empathize with their point of view and trying to have them, you know, connect with you, and then from there you were trying to respect each other and you know, help evolve each other's opinions, right? And so these days, you know, possibly, you know, with the modern technology, with the modern sort of social media speak and so on, dumbing down the language with the idea that if you make shorter videos that have more punchy moments, you know, those are things that are better. So you want to quickly kind of, you know, poke at different people and get them to spit out something that's crazy and say, "See, they're crazy. See, they're crazy." So, you know, there is some of that in sort of the general culture that I see reflected in this. And I'll put links to this video below and another video I'll share to sort of contrast that. But so David was talking with a couple of people, and a couple of them did have decent conversations with him. But, you know, but a lot of them just didn't want to talk to him, didn't want to whatever, and they were getting upset, and they were complaining to each other or whatever. And this is a media guy. This isn't a guy who's just trying to make a stink of his own. This is a guy saying, look, you're out here making a scene. Why don't you explain what you're here for, right? And so it's amazing how so many protesters can't do that. They can yell, they can cry, they can yell, but they can't just talk. And the problem with these people being in charge, protesters in general, of advocating for certain policies and pushing certain agendas, is that they make everyone else into the same kind of creatures, right? If those ideas, right, if the sort of Antifa, is another group as well, where they're often people, they can't talk to people they disagree with, and then as part of that line of thinking, they then can't really talk to each other, because what if they disagree? What if they whatever? So they become quieter and more groupthinky and less challenging of certain ideas within their group, and of course less open to being challenged outside their group, and that makes those groups more easy to control. And there's a long history of super rich evil people who fund a lot of activism and charity and so on, to give them a good name, a good rep, even if they're running, poor operations where they don't treat their workers well or whatever. They can still give themselves a good rep by having their charitable organization, the Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation, and so on, right? So they can say, well, for example, the Rockefeller Foundation was started because American industrialist and legendary super rich guy in America, David Rockefeller, or the Rockefeller family, in the early 1900s, they got a really bad reputation because some of their workers were getting pissed off about how they were treated, so they went on strike. So the Rockefellers sent in some, I think it was Pinkerton security forces, to beat the crap out of the workers and make them go back to work, or beat the crap out of the workers that wanted to strike the most, so the rest of the workers would go back to work. And they got a really bad rep for doing that in the streets, and in some parts of the media they didn't control. So Rockefeller Foundation, or Rockefellers, went, damn, what do we do? I know, we'll come up with a charitable foundation, a tax-exempt charitable foundation, right? The Rockefeller Foundation. And so even if we do some bad things as American businessmen and industrialists and so on, and some of the wealthiest people, in charge, in the country, in terms of being businessmen connected with a lot of politicians in the political system, even if we do some bad things, people will say, oh, come on, the Rockefellers donated so much money to cancer research. They donated so much money to this orphanage. They donated so much money to the Heart and Stroke Foundation. They held this beautiful gala where a bunch of rich people paid $1,000 each to go to this dinner, and they raised, $1 million for charity. It's amazing, right? So it's a way of giving them a good reputation, even when they're doing bad things. And so, again, Rockefeller, Ford, Carnegie Foundation, many others, George Soros, more recently with the George Soros Open Society Foundation, right? And what these rich people do is they tend to promote agendas that empower them and that disempower average people. Those agendas are often hidden. So it sounds good, right? It sounds good. It sounds, like a good idea, right? For example, the Rockefellers promoted feminism, right? And as a legendary Hollywood filmmaker, Aaron Russo, behind the Eddie Murphy hit Trading Places and behind the Bette Midler hit The Rose and others, Aaron Russo was a friend of one of the Rockefeller family lawyers. This lawyer who happened to be a Rockefeller, they've got many people, and this guy who was just part of the family, one of the brothers or whatever, he saw one of Aaron Russo's movies, and Aaron Russo was a Hollywood celebrity, and he's like, I like that guy. Seems kind of cool. I like the way he thinks. I like the movies he makes. So he got in touch with him, and they became friends, and they were hanging out. And the Rockefeller lawyer said to Aaron Russo, hey, Aaron, do you know why the Rockefeller family in the early 1900s promoted feminism so much? Right? And Rockefeller, or Aaron Russo, rather, the filmmaker, was like, well, gee, I don't know. I guess to give women equal rights and equal pay and opportunity. Maybe they could vote. I had no idea. And the Rockefeller lawyer said, Aaron, you're so stupid. We did it because half the population wasn't working. They weren't working for us. They weren't paying taxes to the government that we help control. And plus, if we get the women working too, then we can take the kids. Because before, the women stayed home and they raised and educated the kids. While the dad went to work and worked, the mom stayed home. She raised the kids, make sure they were cool, make sure they had the family values and traditions and all that sort of thing. Now we can take the kids, right? And plus, when it comes to feminism, instead of men being happy to do things for women, they taught women to compete with men and make us both miserable, right? And even my buddy's grandmother, she was like 90 years old. She said to my buddy, I feel so sorry for girls these days. And my buddy's like, why is that, Grandma? She goes, well, back in my day, we got our men to do whatever we wanted. We just never argued about it, right? It was just the woman was empowered and she was like, well, I'm in charge of the home and I'm making sure everything's cool here. And she'd be like, honey, would you mind getting me a stick of butter? I'd like to finish cooking. God damn it, woman, I can climb mountains and wrestle grizzly bears. I can get my sweetie a stick of butter. Is that all you need? Yes, dear, that's all I need. Great. I'm out of here. I'll be back in 20 minutes, right? And man was on a mission. Men want to feel useful. Women want to feel special. So the man was out and off to go get a stick of butter, come back, help her cook dinner, or whatever, right? And she was like, he, right? He's such a big, strong man, but I'm so sweet. I can control him, right? And they have more power over more power, which is really what they want. Women want power, but they don't want ultimate power over a man. They want to have some power over a powerful man. And the man can still be powerful, but then she can use that powerful man to help her feel happy and safe and secure and get stuff and so on, right? And she says, yeah, and now it'd be like, hey, we don't have any food with butter in the fridge. Oh, all right, honey. Well, you should get some. Gah, useless, can't do anything. Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure. Can I finish watching the game? Oh, you finished watching the game? I won't be able to finish. It's an arguing thing, as opposed to a sweetie. Yes, dear. I'd really like something. God damn it, my woman wants something, I'll go get it. It was a different way of approaching debates and discussions, right? And there's many other issues with that. But, ideally, you'd have empowered men helping women feel empowered, not empowering women to disempower men as part of this conflict. So I say all that to really demonize and attack the modern and current activist and protest model, especially coming from the left, radical left, liberal side of things. And there's even an amazing interview with Norman Dodd, Normandodd. Legendary interview with G. Edward Griffin and Norman Dodd. I think there's a copy on my BitChute channel, but there's other copies floating around out there on YouTube and elsewhere. And this is on the impact of tax-exempt foundations on the United States. And generally speaking, as a principle, everywhere else in the world where this model is pretty much used. And what happened with Norman Dodd is in the late 1920s, because Norman Dodd was really old. This interview that G. Edward Griffin did was in like 1980 with Norman Dodd. And Norman Dodd was like 80-something years old. He was like, he died shortly after that interview, right? But in that interview, Norman Dodd talked about how he worked for, I believe it was a U.S. senator or a congressman, right? And he worked for a U.S. senator or congressman. And this U.S. senator or congressman started noticing that all these rich people who obviously had significant power and influence in the United States, they were coming up with, as I said, these foundations, Ford, Rockefeller, Carnegie Foundation, and so on, right? And so this senator who Norman Dodd was working for wanted to know, what are these foundations up to? What is the real impact of these foundations, right? They obviously have some influence, right? Obviously these billionaires and so on, they put a ton of money into a foundation that's got tens of millions of dollars, and then that foundation pumps those dollars into efforts on the ground in the country and in communities. So what are they exactly up to, right? And then, it's a great interview. I won't spoil the whole thing for you, but the bottom line is that The senator assigned Norman Dodd to check it out. Norman Dodd assigned a female lawyer, and this female lawyer was a young, up and coming female lawyer, not too many at the time in the 1920s, and she was very supportive of the Rich Guy Foundations. She was very supportive. She was like, they do so much good work. They're such good people. I'm a young professional. I want to be liked by rich people like that. And so Norman Dodd was like, great, no problem. We're not going in there with an anti-rich person or anti-foundation bias. We're sending somebody in there who is sympathetic to these people and their efforts and think they're good, right? So she went in there, and basically they asked a few different foundations. Some said no. Rockefeller said no. Carnegie said no. And then somebody at the Ford Foundation says, all right, I'll tell you what. You are U.S. politicians. You're in power. We want to get some, good. We want to be in your good graces. We don't want to be in trouble with you. So we'll let you, for a couple of weeks, look at the minutes of our meetings. We've got these meetings. We take down a bunch of minutes, right, and so on. So you basically, when people are meeting, there's somebody typing most of the key points of what they're meeting about, what they're discussing, and what they're deciding, right? So he said, I tell you what, I'll give you a couple of weeks to look at some of the, you can come to us. We're not going to give them to you, but you can come to our offices. You can look at the typewritten minutes of our meetings, and you can, draw your own conclusions, right? And so this female lawyer went there, and she finished, the majority of the task, and she came back to Norman Dodd and the senator's office, and she was just a basket case. She was just driven crazy, right? Because she saw, to her horror, what I just said, which is basically they plan on socially re-engineering America. That's what they were there for. They planned on, introducing more public schooling, taking the kids out of the home, bringing in more socialism, more government control over people, growing the size of it, which they control to help control people, and changing the way people think and behave, making people less able to fight for their rights and their values and their traditions, right? There were all these plans. Well, if we do this, in 10 years, this will happen. If we do this, in 10 years, this will happen. If we do this, in 20 years, this will happen. If we do this, in 5 years, it'll be. If we do this, it'll sound good on the surface, but then after a few years, it'll be, we'll come up with the homeless foundation, right? And then the homeless foundation will want to grow from 5 people to 50 people, and we'll need a lot more homeless, and it'll be really important to have a homeless foundation with this many homeless, and so they have these cycles, right, to sort of generically talk about what they're up to. So that drove her crazy, and the senator Norman Dodd had to kind of stash her in kind of a sort of a less stressful paper pushing job, because she couldn't handle. She basically had a mental breakdown when she discovered what these foundations were up to. And this was in the 1920s, and there were congressional hearings on this. It's in the records of the congressional. I remember learning about this a while ago, and I was like, wow, really? And so I Googled it, looked into it, and I saw the congressional, on the U.S. Government, Congress website, I saw the archive of kind of when they had official meetings about what they found, right? So this is out there. But again, it's just buried later on by media, education, elites, professionals, the establishment, and so on. These things are buried. So I strongly recommend that interview with Norman Dodd. And I bring all that up to get back to the protesters, right? And I bring all that up to get back to the protesters and to say, we have to understand that these people who can't talk to people they disagree with and can't talk to each other and can just yell and bitch and moan and cry and freak out and want you to be sympathetic to them freaking out, and pushing for everyone. We need carbon taxes. We all need to stop using straws, stop using plastic, stop living in houses, stop driving cars. We should live in mud huts. We should ride bicycles. Everybody. It's what about China? What about India? They're polluting too. Don't be racist. It's like, well, you don't make any sense, right? And all these other protesters, they're often paid by these groups. They've got handlers at the top. At the very top, they know what they're doing, maybe a little bit lower, maybe do, maybe don't. At the bottom, grassroots, astroturf, useful idiots, carrying out these causes, saying if you do this, if you do this, if you advocate for this, then things will be better, when in fact they often make things worse. And this comes to issues of politics, religion, culture, race, and so on. People are like, we need to do this, we need black people to be respected. How do we do that? We say we hate white people. It's like, well, how are these white people supposed to respect you then, and trust you and respect you and treat you as equals and give you jobs? Listen, don't disagree with me. How dare you? You're a jerk. You don't understand. 400 years of slavery. Okay, never mind. You're yelling. We can't really discuss this. Forget it. Fine, you're right. White people suck. Always suck. Can't dance. Shouldn't talk. Fine. Never mind. Right? That's not an organic, that's not an informed and empowered organic activist that's coming up with that. That is a top-down controlled anti-free speech commie zombie that's doing that. And even if they believe that they're right, they're actually reflecting a divide and conquer agenda, right? And there's all sorts of examples of that. So when it comes to protests in general, and protesters and activists and charitable organizations and so on, it's important to understand kind of where their money comes from, where their support comes from, where the head of the George Soros Open Society Foundation probably makes, or whatever, probably makes $500,000 a year, and then the person below that makes $100,000 a year, and then the activist below that makes $50,000 a year, and so on. And I've been to some of these groups. I've been to, when I was looking into this stuff many years ago, thinking, well, I'm a smart guy, I should get involved in something. And I went to Greenpeace, and I was like, hey, Greenpeace, you should think about doing this, think about doing that. And they were like, stop, shut up, we know what we're doing, we're good. And I'm like, you're not trying to evolve your approach, you're not open to discussing the best tactics to get out there. No, this is what we do, you're either with us or you're not. And I was like, well, screw you guys, I'm out of here, right? And I've checked in with a couple of different organizations like that, and many work that way. I had another friend, she was working for a feminist organization, and she used to work for Save the Children organization, and she got kind of burnt out and disillusioned. She was a lovely girl, beautiful young lady, really, really great heart, physically attractive too, but she's beautiful inside and outside, and she really wanted to make a difference. And then she told me, she said, I got sick of working at the feminist organization because all we did was bitch and complain, right? Our job was not to find solutions to where we can connect with people. Our job was to find problems, which made it impossible to connect with people. So, excuse me. And so she just got sick of that sort of institutionalized bitching, right? And this filters down, this type of thinking that they agitate for, these type of policies and ideas, they filter down to the average Joe and Jane American, Joe and Jane Canadian, European, Australian, African, Asian, whatever, wherever this type of crap goes on. More so in the West, obviously, where this model is more common, but certainly, it's out there, right? And so it's important to understand that even if they passionately believe these things, because they don't question them, they don't look into them deeply, they don't understand the funding behind them, they don't understand the nationalism, people protecting their countries, versus globalism, super rich people want to control them centrally with the UN and other organizations. They don't understand that model, and they refuse to look into it or discuss it or acknowledge it or anything when it comes to threatening their job, just like most people with their jobs, right? You're not going to look into things too deeply. If you're a nurse and you're vaccinating kids all the time, you don't really want to find out vaccines are that evil. Now, many do, and they come out and they say it, and they say, I'm so sorry, or we knew, and when I worked there, we knew that every 50 babies, one of them was screwed up, and that's just the way things are. Like, you don't want to look into that too deeply and be all screwed up, be unable to do your job, and so on. So they're constrained by these things, and that's why they can't talk to people they disagree with, and that's why they can't talk to each other. And when it comes to people out there in general, you, others, your kids, your family, your friends, your coworkers, other people where you live, this same type of thinking is what they push in general. So the specific ideas are bad enough, and then this philosophical approach to looking at the world, where you're either as messed up as I am about this and making a big scene and stink about it, or you're evil. It's like, no. We should be able to have an intelligent discussion. You're the expert, you're the activist, you're the protester. you should be able to kick my ass and inform and empower me, even if I'm hostile to what you believe. And I should eventually respect that and evolve my opinion to be more sympathetic to yours. But in many cases, a lot of them can't do that, right? And as I said, there's tons of video footage, out there of this, where even the crazy anti-Trump protesters, they're out there, they're screaming, they're yelling, they're banging drums, they're making a big scene. They've made all these signs. Um, they're dressed up. They've got giant Trump balloons and caricatures and calling him a rat and this and that. And they put a lot of time and effort into it. And yet when it comes to actually talking and talking about how they feel and what Trump is actually up to and why it's so bad, they devolve to the simplest things. And then if you press them on it, they just cut off communication, right? Um, and so I understand the position they're in. My concern is them letting people know about them and other people affected by them pushing for certain ideas and pushing certain ideas, and then other people not resisting them, and then those ideas infecting our culture anyway, right? Um, it gets as bad as the drag queen story hour, right? Where you've got guys in drag, right? Who basically should be dancing for their friends in sleazy bars. No big deal. That's what you're into. Go enjoy. Shit, I go to a strip club. What the hell? But I wouldn't say strippers should be reading to little kids and twerking in front of them at public libraries. And I don't think guys dressed like girls should be reading to little kids and twerking in front of them at public libraries, or getting the kids to crawl on their lap or lay on their body. And it gets worse and worse and worse. There's guys that are opening their legs and flashing their genitals to a room full of kids. And you've got all these moms there and parents there and kids there. And mom's like, okay, they can do whatever they want. They're a protected group. There's nothing I can say. There's nothing I can do. Yes. Oh yeah, I'll send my little 2, 3, 4-year-old to crawl all over you and climb on top of you if that's what makes you happy. That's insane. Meanwhile, a regular, average, straight guy like me, who's great at being a man, good for other men, good for women, good for children, right? Co-signed by millions of people, right? One way or the other. I get within 10 feet of their kid, and the mom's, just back off, perv. It's like, fine, no big deal. Totally understand, right? But if I put on a dress, put on a wig, and then I go to a library and I say, bring him over here, put him on my lap, I'll make him 7 inches taller. She's like, yeah, I guess I better. I don't want to be transphobic, even though you seem just like a normal dude who put on a blonde wig and you still have a goatee, but right? So it gets that bad when you don't challenge these ideas, where that type of thinking, the people behind that push these. And a lot of them have been found out to be pedophiles as well, right? There's been, groups like massresistance.org, checked on a guy in Austin, Texas, massresistance.org, excellent pro-family, pro-kids, pro-values organization operating in different cities worldwide to battle against these agendas, messing up people, messing up kids, messing up families. They sort of saw this, drag queen story hour thing taking place in Austin, Texas. They looked up, they looked up the license plate and some of the social media stuff, histories on some of these drag queens. They found out one of them was a convicted pedophile. He'd been convicted a few years ago of pedophilia, served like a few years, 5 years or whatever, or 3 years on a 5-year sentence or whatever, and then got back out, put on a dress, went to a library. They didn't do background checks on these guys because it would be politically incorrect, whereas a normal guy like me, background checks up the wazoo, and if I'm even allowed to work at a library, So my point in saying all this is not to get into that whole jag, but it's just to show you how dangerous it is to just go along with what these groups are. And above that, the drag queen story hour, above them are groups pushing us to accept that and more crap that screws us up, weakens our kids, weakens our families, weakens our cultures, and makes us easier to control for the very rich people at the very top of that, right? And so, I bring all that up to talk about David Menzies and the protest. And they'll make you one too, right? They'll make you into someone like that too if you don't actively resist it, right? You might be like, whatever, I don't want to get involved, you know. Okay, so what happened to you? Can't talk to people I disagree with. You know how it is. Wipe my nose, look at my toes, feel like crap. Don't say that, right? And then, oh, we can't talk to each other. What if we disagree? Wipe your nose, look at your toes, feel like crap. Don't say that. Sheepish, sideways, sketchy. That's all caused by these ideas pushed without enough pushback. Now, there is some pushback out there, but that's what's caused by this. So that's an example, right? And so David Menzies and the protesters. Now, getting back to this protest, right? And the what can you do part, I'll leave at the end. I'll leave for the end. So you've got David Menzies, Robo-Cops, protesters who yell but can't talk, make you one too, and what can you do? What can you do, right? That's a question, not an answer. What can you do is not, what can you do? That's a question, not an answer. It's been we're sort of brainwashed to say that's an answer. What can you do? So what? So they're taking little kids and pedophiles are putting on wigs and playing with little kids at libraries. What can you do? It's like, no, that's a question. It's not an answer, right? And I'll have that answer for you in a sec. But with respect to David Menzies, back to the protest in Toronto with the Iranians out there, David Menzies was asking these different protesters protesting against the killing of the Iranian general Qasem Soleimani, right? And many of them didn't want to talk to him. Many of them talked to him for a bit. Many of them were getting angrier and angrier at his questioning, or they just hold up signs in front of their face, or they'd bump into him and bully him and curse at him and blah, 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 blah. Again, these are not informed and empowered people who can inform and empower other people. That's why they can yell but can't talk, and they'll turn you into someone who can yell and bitch and moan and cry or whine but can't talk as well, as opposed to a normal, informed and empowered person who's serious about this sort of thing, right? And that's where independent media, journalists, vlogs like this and so on come in. You can see me if I make a big stink out in public, right? And somebody comes to me, hey, what are you making a big stink about? I'm happy to calm down and tell them. We can have a discussion, right? But, the way the protesters work is they're like, hey, big sale, come on in, big sale, come on in, everybody, new store opening, big sale. And you walk into the store and you're like, okay, we're here. You made a big stink in public. You invited us in. What's going on? Oh, nothing. Just can't really tell you much. It's just there's stuff over there. You know how it is. It's like, no, can you explain? No, just maybe you can talk to our spokesperson. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? Right? Either you work there and you know what's going on or you don't. Either you're protesting and you know what's going on, you can speak on it, or you don't, right? And so that's an issue. And I get there might be different levels of interest, different levels of knowledge, but you should have a baseline that you should be able to communicate with anybody if you're going to be making a big scene like that in public. So now we'll get to Robo-Cops, right? Because in this video, I'll show you what happened, basically, right? I'll take you to the first 2 minutes of this Rebel Media video, and I'll post the rest below so you can see it. So I can't. And here it is. It says here, Toronto police threaten rebel journalist for calling Qasem Soleimani a terrorist, by David Menzies for Rebel News, Rebel Media.
So I can't call a terrorist a terrorist?
You're not in this sort of environment. No, you can't. Okay, because that's going to incite a breach of the peace. And that is Canadian law. Am I clear?
If I was to call Osama bin Laden a terrorist, that would be against.
Please, am I clear?
I know you're not clear, sir. I can't call Osama bin Laden.
And it incites a breach of the peace. You will be placed under arrest. You
terrorist? Oh, what am I going to be arrested for? What am I going to be arrested for, sir?
Peace.
Okay, I've already gone on a little bit about this, so I won't get into it. But basically, the first part of the video is him talking to an Iranian a guy for a bit, and the guy was like, Yes, yes, no, the Americans are bad. The general was good. And then David pressed him on it, and then he kind of stopped talking, and some other guy just kind of ushered him away from this curious journalist, right? And that's an example of the police officers, Toronto Police Services officers, who were kind of hearing some complaints about David Menzies from Rebel News talking to these different protesters, and they were literally warning him like that. They were literally physically pushing him back and physically trying to separate him. And he wasn't a counter protester yelling at these protesters, because I get it, right? If somebody's like blah 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 blah, and then you come in blah 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 blah, and you get in each other's faces and you're yelling and yelling and you keep yelling until you start fist fighting, I get it. The cops should separate him. But this was a guy who was asking people, making a big scene in public, right? Like what are you on about? What are you talking about? Right? And he was disagreeing and saying, well, is he a terrorist? Many people call him a terrorist. He's like, no, 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 whatever. But and then you'd get the classic protest things, shoving the sign in his camera's face, bumping into him, swearing at him, and so on, right? And these protesters, instead of saying, come on in, we'll talk to you, we'll educate you, we'll go back and forth, right? They were basically, yelling at him, because I think Rebel News has enough integrity. Many people may not know that, and of course you never know who you're dealing with, and a lot of media lies, and everyone has their own bias. But in fairness, in this 16-minute video, there were a couple of people, right? There was a young lady there, and I think maybe one other guy on the pro Soleimani, you shouldn't have killed that terrorist side, who actually spoke for 30 seconds or something and had a decent back and forth before finally somebody else stepped in and said, don't talk to him anymore, don't talk to him anymore, don't talk to him, don't talk, he's a bad guy, don't talk to him, right? And then there were the counter protesters against that, saying, we're glad he's dead, he's part of an evil Iranian regime repressing the people and screwing around in the Middle East, we're so glad he's dead, we want to get rid of that so the Iranian people can be free. That guy, one of the guys there, said that he was attacked by the protesters, the main group that were against this terrorist being killed, and this guy was perfectly happy to talk about what was going on, right? And sort of the lesson, the moral of the story is that the people that can actually talk, they can talk to people they disagree with, and they can talk to each other. They're informed and empowered, and they can inform and empower you. And even if you don't always agree, you can at least respect each other and understand each other's position and evolve each other's opinions. Those people are more than likely real. The people on the other side who can't talk to each other, can't talk to people they disagree with, and can't talk to each other, the people with those really expensive signs and banners that all look the same, not the homemade stuff, but these ones, that cost, $50 each at Kinko's, or the giant banner they're holding that says, we need this, or whatever, that costs like $5,000 at Kinko's to print up. Those aren't organic activists. Those aren't people on a true grassroots level. Those are the people controlled by super rich people, funded by super rich people, and a lot of them don't know what's going on and can't communicate well about it. And certainly if you don't agree, they don't want to get into a back and forth that reveals how they're wrong or reveals how they're stupid or misinformed. And so at the higher levels, they'll cut you off. And if there are some people like, say, intelligence agents and others that are meant to prop up some of these, false activist groups or whatever, they'll cut you off and they'll stop you and they'll snipe at you, right? And at the lower levels, they just don't know any better. They understand that they're not supposed to talk to people they disagree with, and they don't talk much with each other. They don't debate these ideas much. They don't, test, what they've learned. They just sort of agree. They don't make people feel bad by disagreeing, and then they're just sort of quiet and easy to control, right? And when it comes to the cops, and the cops, I call them Robo-Cops in a way, because not because I hate cops, because I've dealt with the cops a bunch of times, as an artist, as an activist in Toronto, a little bit in the US. I've dealt with the cops a whole bunch of times, right? Like a lot, right? And for the most part, it's fine. It's cool, right? You just don't escalate, right? A lot of cops, sometimes they show up going, I came here because of a problem and I don't want another one, right? And if you go, hey, what's your problem, buddy? Then, of course, they're going to, you're just escalating things. If you're like, cool, man, you came here because there's a problem, you don't want another one, let's talk about why you came here, right? And the cops calms down and goes, all right. If you're having a loud house party in a hotel room and bang, 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 police, you're being too loud in there. You don't go, screw you, pig. Just no. We're trying to have fun. He says, no, calm down, calm down. Everybody calm. Yes, what is it, officer? We got some noise complaints. You're being loud. Do I have to hit you with a stick? No, no, no. We're cool. We're just going to talk about what's going on. We're going to understand why you're here, and we're going to make sure we can keep it down. And the cops calm down a bit, realize they don't have to hit you with a stick or shoot you or be in danger themselves or whatever, or save someone else from being in danger, or, it's fine, right? And I've dealt with them a bunch, right? And, now, in fairness, that much power and that much autonomy, and there is some corruption. There are definitely some bad cops out there. But if they were all bad, or a majority were bad, we'd be hearing about it a hell of a lot more than we normally do on the streets, in the media, in the independent media, and so on. There's definitely some. I've seen videos myself. I've seen whatever. There's jerks in every job, and some jerks in some jobs can do a lot more jerking than others, right? Jerk at McDonald's can spit in your burger. Jerk who's a cop can crack your skull open with a stick, right? And say it's your fault, right? So it exists. But for the most part, I found them to be just a guy with a job. He's not better or worse than you. He's definitely more skilled in some ways, and there is a certain courage that goes on. With policing, sometimes it's a lot of nothing, and then it's a really bad something. And they deal with assholes and liars and criminals and murderers and pedophiles. They deal with just some scumbags, right? So for them to be generally cool, despite dealing with all that, they say sometimes when you stare into the abyss becomes you, or if you battle monsters, you become a monster, right? So it can have a corrosive effect. But for many of them to be as cool as they are requires a lot of character and training and discipline. And I found that a lot of them have it, right? So that's one side of policing, right? And, but hey, listen, a couple of times it's been, hey, buddy, I'm not so sure about that. And that goes both ways. I've said that to them. Hey, buddy, not so sure about that. They've said that to me. Hey, buddy, not so sure about that, right? It goes both ways. I'll give you a couple examples, for example, right? During G20 martial law in Toronto, there was a G20 summit held in Toronto. And there was going to be a giant protest. Again, the protesters, when the government invites you to a fight with the cops, don't go. It's a setup, right? That's part of the protest model. Right, the protest model, that's why I even wrote a song saying fuck a protest, about the protest for the G20 summit, played it on my radio show at the time. I was really against that. I was advocating for the offline info war as opposed to the protest model, because the protest model is, the G20 summit is held in Toronto. They build giant barricades. They bring in 20,000 cops from all across the country. And the government invites the protesters to fight with the cops, and the cops beat the crap out of them. They put it on TV. All the third parties hate the cops. They hate the protesters. They hate the summit. And the rich, evil people at the G20 summit of group G20 nations, which is a summit of some of the biggest nations in the world, talking about globalization and how to make it sort of, sell out their countries to global governance, supposedly. They're behind walls hundreds of feet away with no idea what's going on, right? So you did nothing. You did nothing except for get together and show your strength and you're in this cause, which isn't a bad thing. So I wouldn't say it's nothing. But ultimately, it results in nothing because your goal should not just be to say, we're really mad. We already know. We're really mad. We already know. We're really mad. We already know. Until you fight with the cops, they beat the crap out of you, throw you in jail or whatever, and everyone sees it on TV and they hate both of you. Right? That is nothing when it comes to letting other people where you live know why you're upset, what's going on. The media is making everyone interested in this topic, say the G20 summit or whatever in 2010 in Toronto, for example, and then from there, sharing some options or some solutions, right? This doesn't work, right? The better way is to inform and empower your neighbors so they can go, okay, TV says this, you guys say that, and we get it. We get it. We get why people would be against this. we're a bit more informed and empowered. We'll look into it more. We'll frame things when it comes to this subject matter differently, and we'll slowly but surely, develop a more evolved understanding of this. And then when it comes to election time at the municipal or state or provincial or federal levels, we'll find politicians that echo that thinking, we'll put them into power, and they'll do a better job protecting our country and our people and making it a better place to live, right? That's the model, as opposed to the rock concert protest model promoted since the 60s. Been the same since the 60s. Got us this far. Where the hell is we? Right? It was to the Kanye West beat, Can't Tell Me Nothing. That's why I say, fuck a protest. Fuck you gonna do before this? Yeah. And it just all played out right there. I said it before, said it during, said it after. It's all right there. That's what happened. And it happens all over the world. Right? So there's a better model than the protest model, right? But anyway, during the G20 summit, early on, before the main protest weekend where people ran to the streets and smashed things and the cops chased them down, beat them up and stuff, before all that crap, in the week leading up to that, they had a whole bunch of cops all around Toronto in July of 2010 in the summer. Right? And I was out there documenting it, the video camera, voice recorder, and so on. And I noticed, all these cops stationed like every half a block were just kind of staring at people. They were like, anybody could be a protester. Anybody could be a black bloc. Or before Antifa, it was black bloc. Same thing, right? Anybody could be one of those people. They could have their black clothes in their backpack, and they could do anything. So basically the cops were staring at everybody in the city of Toronto on a beautiful July week, whatever, a beautiful week in July, beautiful weather, people trying to go out. And in downtown Toronto, you had all these cops hopped up like a football team that's ready to tackle and kill somebody, just staring at everybody and scaring the shit out of everybody. Right? Just you'd walk by and cops would be like, you might be one. You might be one. You might know where one is. And they were just glaring at him and growling at all of them. Right? And I was really pissed off about this because I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? Right? And I literally said it. Right? Like I went out there with my video camera and a voice recorder or whatever, and I had a radio show at the time and other groups I was involved with and so on. And I yelled at them. I said, hey, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? Don't just scare the shit out of everybody here. Chill the fuck out. It's 35 degrees Celsius. It's hot, right? It's like 95 degrees in America or whatever, right? Fahrenheit. It's hot as hell out here. You're wearing a wool suit. You're going to give yourself a fucking stroke. So just chill the fuck out. Calm the fuck down. You can keep an eye on things without scaring the shit out of everybody and a bunch of innocent people. And I yelled at them, right? I yelled at hundreds of them. Right? So I yelled at ones here, yelled at ones there, filmed it all, recorded it all, played some of it on my radio show, and I had them glaring at me, and I glared at them back. What the fuck? They're like, what the fuck? Right? And so you just yelled at them, stared me down, whatever. And, I did it a bunch of times, and then eventually I went back, next day or whatever, and instead of like leaning forward, and scaring, right? A lot of them were just sitting back. Big old cop hands and cop forearms on their cop belt, head on a swivel. Cool. Just keep an eye on things. Yep. Nothing's getting past me. If I see anything, pull out my gun and shoot you. But till then, just chilling, staring, whatever. Because it was on some man-to-man shit, right? It was on some man-to-man shit. Like, no, buddy. This is not respectful. There's no way to show or get it. What the fuck are you doing? Right? It's bullshit. You're fucking pissing your pants because somebody might be nearby that's bad, and you're fucking scaring the shit out of everybody else. What the fuck is wrong with you, right? And so they chilled out, and I didn't yell at them anymore. What's the point? If I yell at them then they'd get on me. They said, buddy, now we got to. So when they were doing something, I go at them. If I'm doing something, go at me, right? And so that's an example, right? But other times they've checked me on something. I'm filming somewhere and I'm making a stink about something, and I'm talking about people turning into zombies and anti-free speech zombies messing each other up or whatever. Cops come over, hey buddy, listen, you got to keep it down a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, you can't be. I was like, okay, sorry about that, officer. You're right. apologize. Ignoring people acting rude puts you in a good mood, like hanging up on a rude telemarketer or avoiding some rude, sketchy, crazy person, or whatever. You just feel better. And as I feel better, I get louder and I get more confident because I feel better. And then I'm too obnoxious and I really shouldn't do that. I'm so sorry about that. Right? And the cop's like, all right, man, just keep it down. Cool. Don't want to, have to ask you again. It doesn't happen all the time, but it has happened. Right? And I was like, all right, cool. No problem. Right? And there's been a number of other sort of, instances and examples like that, right? Where, we were up New Year's and we were standing up on some, area where we shouldn't be above Toronto City Hall, and cops shoved us, and I turned around and said, hey, don't fucking touch us. Tell us first. The guy was like, move, and pushed us. I turned back around and just faced him. This is a big dude. I'm average height, average weight, average build, 5'10", $165 or whatever. This dude's like 6'3", 6'4", 200 or whatever. I just turned around and just went back at him. Hey, don't you fucking touch us till you fucking tell us first. He's looking at me. I'm looking at him, right? And instead of like going at me, there's lots of people around, obviously, too, and other cops and lots of people, whatever, New Year's Eve or whatever. He just understood. Right? And I didn't press it. I didn't go on and on and on. But he pushed back, right? Because if a cop says, move, you got to get off here. You can't be standing up here in this area of the square. This area is closed off. We put some yellow fences there, but somebody moved them and opened them, and everybody came through and came on up, and now we got to get you all out of here, right? And I was like, don't fucking touch us until you fucking tell us to move, right? You can't say move and shove somebody. You can say move. If they don't move, then maybe you can shove them. I get it, right? Back and forth, and they've, I was putting up some posters during G20 martial law and saying, hey, you can do something else besides this. See, here's some better things to do besides. And, a bunch of cops approached me, and, they were all hopped up on the G20 martial law stuff. They all had machine guns. They weren't pointed at me. They were just sort of half raised, right? And they were half raised, and 3 or 4 cops behind this one cop, coming over to me. What you up to? What are you doing? I have to talk to me about this and that. What's right? What's wrong? Where it's legal to poster and flyer, where it's not, and so on. So, it happens, right? There's been a number of those things where I'm sitting somewhere and I'm just chilling and I'm filming or pontificating on what's going on or whatever. And some guy's like, hey, I want to get by there. There's not much space between us. And he could just go around. It's like on a newspaper box in between another one. There's like 1.5 feet between this box and my legs and the other box. And I was like, no. He's like, hey, excuse me. I was like, no, you can just go around me. And the guy pushed me and shoved me aside. And so I threw my coffee cup at him, and it had a half cup of cold coffee in it. It hit his shirt. And he was like, he's like, officer. And so I had to go. The cops is like, hey, all right, man. And I was like, yeah, whatever. I'll tell him what happened. We're here. It's a city. It's near Yonge and Dundas, the center of Toronto. There's lots of people around. That's what happened. Guy's like, hey, move. And I was like, no. He shoved me and threw something at him, right? And then he was like, police, get that guy. And then he ran away. And I was like, all right, whatever. The cops came over to me, and they were like, what's going on? And I was like, I was just sitting here. The guy said, move. And there's not much space here. There's no reason to walk right near me. It's just one of those, why are you so happy? Why are you so confident? I should mess with you type of screwed up kind of guys. And I was like, no. And so he pushed me and shoved me out of the way. So I threw my coffee cup at him, right? And so the cop said to me, okay, you have your ID? I'm like, yeah, here's my ID. Check my criminal record. No criminal record. And he said, that's assault with a weapon, right? That half a cup of cold coffee you threw at him. And I was like, officer, he shoved me. So instead of using the coffee cup, should I have hit him with my fist? Would that have been better? Right, than assaulting him with throwing my coffee cup at him after he shoved me, right? What's better? Tell me. And he just looked at me, and he just shook his head. He didn't want to get into it, right? He didn't want to say, yes, that's better. He didn't want to say, no, what you did was right. He just drop it. I don't want to have this discussion, right? And I was like, meh. So I checked my ID. The guy was gone. They were like, meh, let me go. Who cares? Right? And so there's been things like that have happened here and there, right? And a lot of times I've been right, a couple of times I've been wrong, a lot of times they've been right, a couple of times they've been wrong. The point is that we're all men here, mostly men. A couple of chicks. If the chicks are with men, then they can be good at being chicks. If the men aren't good at being men, the chicks are just awful too, right? But with a bunch of men around, the chicks are usually not too bad, right? They're definitely more paranoid and more dangerous because they don't have the sort of you know, we know we can physically stop you, right? So sometimes the women can be worse at being cops because they can resort to more force or violence or whatever, and they don't have the physical presence and imposing to kind of calm things down. So it's not something that I always think is a good thing. But with a bunch of dudes around, a couple of chicks in the mix, I found the chick cops are cool too, right? Um, and I talk about all this to kind of humanize them, right? It's a very dangerous job, right? I shared a video of how dangerous it was when a chick cop pulled up to she had a body vest cam on, so it recorded all this. She did a routine traffic stop on this guy, right? She went over to the driver's side window. She said, "Okay, can you show me your license and registration, please?" And the guy reached over, pulled out a gun, bang, 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 shot at her point blank range, right? She ran back, pulled out her gun, bang, 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 emptied her gun into the car, right? Eventually killed the driver. Turns out the driver was a felon who didn't want to get pulled over for a routine traffic stop, like, yeah, you might have been going 10 miles over the limit, I just want to warn you or whatever. Didn't want to have his license run because that would, you know, show him to be a wanted felon. So when the chick cop came over to the window, you know, he decided, screw this, I'm just going to shoot her in the face, shoot her in the chest, shoot her in the head, and then take off, right? So it's a dangerous job. So you have to respect people that want to do that. You shouldn't just automatically demonize them. At the same time, I say Robo-Cops because I saw an interview with a police officer, you know, sample interview, but it was representative of what police officers go through. And this cop was part of a particularly bad group of cops that were doing corrupt stuff, right? And this is a leadership thing. If you got a bad cop leader, then the cops below them can't be good guy cops, right? You got to go along with what the leader says. So there are definitely some bad cops out there and bad cop leaders out there. I'm not saying there aren't, but there's also, as I've said, a lot of decent ones that are just maybe not the best people, but definitely not the worst people, but decent, solid people. A lot of people with good character who've got a hard job to do and deal with a lot of crap and still come out kind of okay after that, right? But this interview with this cop talked about how, you know, what was his mindset when he was going out into the community and doing some nice things, but also some not nice things in the community, hassling people, shaking down minorities, blacks, others, kids, whatever, you know, shaking down drug dealers for doing some corrupt stuff or whatever. And he said, basically, you just shut off your mind. You're just doing a job. You're Robo-Cops. You're not a normal person who's free to sort of do whatever you want in that situation. You're a person who's following some rules and regulations, who's following orders from your police commanders and your leaders, and you're given certain responsibilities that you've got to carry out, whether you agree with them or not. It's not like every decision you can just question and say, why are we doing this? It's like, you weren't at the meeting. Just shut up and do it, right? If you're at the meeting, we went through all that. Just go do that, right? And so a lot of cops turn into Robo-Cops, where they're not even really thinking as a unique, free, human individual and sovereign citizen. They're thinking as part of a Robo-Cop police force, right? And even during G20 martial law, you know, as I talked about a few minutes ago, a lot of the cops were just going out there and they were just Robo-Copped out. They were just, okay, so the Canadian protesters at the G20 Martial Law Summit in Toronto just finished singing "Oh Canada." As soon as they finish, attack! And they attacked them all. And, you know, it's like, who the hell would do that? You're in Canada, a bunch of Canadian protesters, they're not being violent, they're not being whatever. They just finished singing "Oh Canada," and all of a sudden you get the little order in the ear, okay, they just finished, attack them. Right? And that's on video. There's lots of video of that. Very, very famous scene. Now, no Canadian in their right mind, no Canadian cop in their right mind would do that, right? They wouldn't just be like, okay, these guys aren't causing trouble. They're not breaking things. They're not being too whatever. They're just singing "Oh Canada," and they're against what the politicians in the building behind us are doing or over there are doing. And we're not going to attack them as soon as they sing "Oh Canada." We're not going to start, okay, everybody start running with your sticks and beating the crap out of them. But again, Robo-Cops, right? And even that's on a bigger sort of taking orders level, right? Where you're like, okay, go, go, go. But even on a smaller level where you're just going through the routine duties of policing. A lot of times they shut off their normal human questioning, is this the right thing to do brain, and they switch into Robo-Cop mode. So even the police officers that were questioning David Menzies, where they're like, if you keep talking to these people and calling people terrorists and antagonizing them, we'll arrest you for breach of peace, right? Because the cops are just, logically thinking, if this guy sets these 200 people off and they start rioting, we're going to be in the middle of it. We're going to have to stop it or clean it up or get hurt or hurt people. So we got to stop you from being, a dick and antagonizing these people protesting. Even though you're just a journalist asking questions, you should be able to. People should be able to talk to you if they want, or walk away if they don't. Not come up to you and you suck, and then you shouldn't be here. You came up to me. You shouldn't be here. Get out of my face. You came to my face. I'm just filming and I'm a journalist. And just acting protester crazy, right? Regardless, right? But it's sort of the Robo-Cop mentality where it's like, this is what I can say. Lawyers know what they can and cannot say, right? Lawyers are very much like that too. Lawyers are, I've interviewed lawyers. I've done sort of executive conferences for general counsels at Fortune 500, 1,000 companies, right? And I've talked to general counsels, chief legal officers, and so on, right? I had to learn this first, right? And I learned that lawyers know what they can and cannot say, and they simply can't answer certain questions. It's like typing something into a computer program, right? You're typing into a computer, and the computer won't do something. If you get a word wrong or a letter wrong or whatever wrong, the computer won't execute the program. If you're like capture screenshot, and you spell screenshot wrong with, one E or something or whatever, it won't do it, right? They won't work. Lawyers are often like that. Cops are often like that, because when you're involved in legalities, you've got to be so precise or you could be screwed up, right? And lawyer told me this, right? The lawyer told me this, and a writer for a legal professional magazine, the magazine that all the lawyers read, Lawyer Monthly or whatever. They told me that, right? They said, yeah, you've got to ask lawyers certain questions in certain ways. If you don't ask them the question in a certain way, they won't help you ask it in many cases. I mean, some people, different than others, but generally speaking, they won't, fill in the blanks for you, or I know what you're trying to say, or whatever. They'll be like, nope, does not compute, cannot answer that. Cannot put words in your mouth, cannot get words out of mine, right? So you're like, okay, what if I phrase it more carefully this way and more accurately this way? Then can you answer this question? You're like, that one I can answer, but the other one, no, right? And a lot of cops are the same way, where David Menzies was like, what would I be arrested for? Breach of peace. That's against Canadian law. And David Menzies is like, are we under Sharia law? It's like, no, we're not. It would be a breach of peace. It's like, officer, can you tell me? No, I can't. I can't have a nuanced discussion about your political beliefs or their political beliefs or what's going on here. I am Robo-Cop. I have job to do. Job is to, uphold the law, preserve the peace, follow rules and regulations, and so I cannot have a really good discussion with you about what you should be able to do here, what they should be able to do, what makes sense. I can't do that. I can't get into that with you, right? All I can do is I can Robo-Cop. Sir, you have to move back. If you antagonize these people, we'll arrest you for breach of peace. Are we under Sharia law? Should you be able to do that? Is journalism okay? Is this and that okay? I can't get into a broad philosophical discussion with you. They're not saying that, but I'm just putting words in to describe the situation and the thinking. Is say I can't do this with you. I can't get into this with you and express how I feel. I can't say, yeah, I think all these people are assholes and that terrorist Qasem Soleimani should be killed. And and I'm a huge supporter of that. And I hate the fact that people are advocating for Sharia law in this country. And I'm happy you're questioning these people out here protesting and trying to get to the bottom of whether they make sense or not. They can't do that. They're Robo-Cops, right? So it's important to be sympathetic to that, right? Now, in different circumstances, in environments where there aren't a lot of people around and they're not sort of heavily on duty in more casual situations, they can have maybe a bit of a looser conversation with you, right? But still not that much, right? Um, After G20 martial law, some cops came over to me and another guy. We were both reporters, me for a radio show, him for a newspaper, and they came to us and they wanted to talk to us about how their commanders at the G20 summit were making them do all sorts of crazy things. It's like 5 o'clock in the morning, and they're like, okay, we need you bike cops to bike down to so-and-so within 2 minutes. Something might happen. And the cops are like racing on their bikes down there. We got to get down there. Not sure what would happen. Not sure if a bomb would blow up or somebody would attack them or what was going on. And they would just get there at 5 in the morning and get there at 5:05 in the morning and stop. What's going on? Nothing would be going on, right? And they were like, yeah, we think they might have been drunk or something. They were just drunk and bored and ordering us to do all sorts of stupid shit. And I told them, I was like, officers, they're in uniform or whatever. I was like, you guys, like, we're reporters. Like, we don't have to quote you on this. We're not going to identify you. But is it cool? And like, yeah, totally cool. You can say you talked to a couple of cops, and we said that. We think some of the G20 commanders might have been drunk with some of the stupid shit they were telling us to do. So we weren't happy about it either. We know we look bad on TV. We know the government invited protesters to fight with the cops, and we beat them up. And we all look like shit and everyone hates us. So yeah, here, take this. Make sure that the average, guy and girl, as best you can in the media knows that the average cop wasn't behind, what they were ordered to do, right? And so we were like, all right, cool. So we reported it, we at Queen and Queen West and John in downtown Toronto on a patio at a Second Cup coffee shop there. These cops approached us. They kind of recognized us, recognized me somewhat, recognized my buddy somewhat, and they just came over and they were like, bleh, here, we need to get this out to you. And it wasn't just me. Joe Warmington of the Toronto Sun, right? They also leaked to him and told him that the commanders were acting stupid and crazy and gave him some different stories. Some different cops gave him some different stories, that he published in the Toronto Sun newspaper. And so, I bring that up, as this video, David Menzies, Robo-Cops, protesters who yell and can't talk, make you one too, and what can you do, to sort of put all of this in context, right? And so, it's important to understand that, to understand how to deal with them, what their limitations are, and know that they can't be as free as, Joe or Jane, red-pilled activist going out there. I've got a YouTube channel and a camera, and I can say and do whatever I want, and those people are being mean. They have more limitations on their behavior, right? So finally, the last thing I'll say is, what can you do, right? So establish David Menzies and his adversarial YouTube-style interviewer, poke style, trying to get something for the YouTube videos, something that'll go viral, and so on. Not having a real empathetic debate, but trying to get something quick for his 15-minute video. You don't want to go, because if you really have a long conversation with somebody, right, then it'll be hard to share in many cases, right? Now, I think it's worthwhile and it's healthy, and some people do. There are some videos like that, right? But the modern style is trying to get clickbait, virality, to prove you're right by proving they're stupid, by making them do something, say something stupid, right? So that's a general kind of YouTube culture thing. And yet, when it comes to the offline info war and what can you do, there's a lot more to it than that you can do, right? You can actually have those conversations if you're not just obsessed with being right, getting clicks, and getting out of there and getting on to something else. If you're actually trying to connect with each other as empathetic human beings, there is more you can do. And so on that, I'll take you to a video and I'll put a link to this below as well. And this video is called TTS 101, How to Truth Action. It's only 7 minutes, right? And this shows a very, very successful truth action that we had and how to do it back in the day with a group called Toronto Truth Seekers, right? Toronto Truth Seekers. Now, Toronto Truth Seekers basically started on meetup.com. Meetup.com, right? You could use whatever you want. Meetup.com was what we used way back in the day, like MySpace was used way back in the day. And so whoever came up with Toronto Truth Seekers did, right? And I was one of the people who was initially involved as well, and one of the leaders, because we were red pilled, and we were sick of just watching stuff on YouTube and whatever, and thinking that and not having people to talk to about it, right? So many people couldn't talk, didn't want to talk about it, blah blah blah. It's gotten much worse today in some ways. Also gotten much better today in other ways with a lot more sharing of information, but it's a mixed bag. But so we got together, right? We signed up at meetup.com, and what we did, and this is something, when I say what can you do, right? That's not a question, or that's not an answer, it's a question. And this is what you can do. This is what you can do today, anywhere in the world, or anywhere in the relatively free world. North Korea, a little tougher. China, probably a little tougher. But anywhere in Europe, Australia, Canada, America, anywhere in the world, you can do this. It's just about. Russia, maybe even in North Korea, China, possibly, but much harder. But any place that's not a real communist dictatorship where they're scooping people up in vans off the street, taking them to torture chambers and poking them until they give up the names of all their families and friends, and then scooping them up in vans and torturing them, where they're not doing that. Anywhere where they're not doing that type of crap, you can do this. And it involves much more than just bitching to like-minded strangers on the internet, typing to like-minded strangers on the internet, and then offline just kind of being quiet and sheepish and sideways and uncomfortable with each other, right? You can do much more than that. So, so what I'm with Toronto Truth Seekers is we would meet every Saturday for lunch. We would meet at a shawarma place, Lebanese shawarma place, right? And we typically go there. Most of us would order. You got to order. You can't just sit there. A couple people who were maybe broker than others didn't have to. They were with the rest of us, but a bunch of us would order. And we'd get shawarma sandwiches, and we were all fellow red-pilled patriots. And we would just take this online, watching Alex Jones videos or other movies or documentaries, and learning what's going on and learning how the media lies and learning what the truth is, or at least the best version we could find is compared to the lies, and getting whatever. And we didn't, we would just get together and we would talk to each other about it. We'd be sitting beside each other, having conversations, developing relationships and friendships, and we'd meet for lunch, from say 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturdays, hang out for a couple of hours. Some people would come and go, people would be late, people would be whatever, people would leave, after an hour or 2 hours, we'd break up the meeting. People who still want to hang out because they built those bonds and relationships and friendships over being able to communicate well about stuff they were passionate about, they would continue hanging out and so on. So that was cool, right? And then after that happened, after those meetings, because you can only talk so much about, where you live going to hell before you want to do something about it. After that happened, this is what happened next, right? And so I'll show you. This is a video, and I'll put a link to this below. It says TTS 101, How to Truth Action. This is Toronto Truth Seekers 101. How to Truth Action, right? And a lot of this stuff is suppressed, and there's actually other copies of this video here. If you see, it doesn't have that many comments, because this is really effective. And YouTube censors a lot of stuff, but whatever. The point is that this is what you can do, and this is way better than anything I've seen in my life, right? It's better than anything I've ever seen in terms of what people are doing. It's polite patriotism in a nutshell. I was one of the leaders of this group, so I was one of the architects behind this model, but I'm not taking all the credit. Many other polite Canadian patriots contributed to this model, and thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands of other Canadians in the center of downtown Toronto, Canada, were cool with it. They were all cool with it. They were minding their own business, or they were interacting with us, or they were saying hello, or they were curious, or they were laughing, or they were coming over, they were talking to us, or they were sharing information with us, or we were sharing information with them. Everybody was cool with this. In fact, people were so cool with it, even the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, the state broadcaster, saw us being cool, saw so many people being cool with us, and even though they normally wouldn't cover the issues we were covering, and definitely not from the angle that we were taking on these issues, we did such a good job, they covered us. Right? So even in America or Europe or wherever, even if the media, lies, it lies and this and that, and they've got an agenda and blah, 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 a lot of good reporters in there and editors, right? A lot of them want to do a better job than they can. A lot of them are trying to do a better job than they can. But they can't necessarily report on things they're not supposed to or cover subjects they're not supposed to. Just like a lawyer knows they can't wear track pants to court, sweatpants to court, a journalist knows what they can and cannot say. But what they can do is they can cover a group of fellow Canadians, Americans, English, Swedish, whoever. They can cover a group of them politely, calmly, consistently, and successfully informing and empowering people where they live. They're like, we're not saying we agree with them. We're just saying that they are a story because the hood co-signs them. The hood is cool with them doing what they do. So I'll show you. And so CBC News came and covered us for a couple of hours. They sent a cameraman and a reporter, and we filmed them filming us, and we made videos of that, and they filmed us, and we made part of a small news story that was aired across the country, right? And so this is possible, but this is not the protest model. This is not the people who yell, the protesters who yell and can't talk turn you into one too. This is the informed and empowered model. People who don't yell, who can talk, and can help you talk, with people you disagree with, and with each other, and with your own kids, family, friends, co-workers, strangers, whoever, and so on, right? So this is a different model, and this is a superior model to typically what you'll find. So again, the video, TTS 101, How to Truth Action. I'll play the first couple of minutes, and then you can see the rest for yourself at the link below.
Everybody can theorize, but once you actually get on the streets and start doing it, you get some real data to work with. And we just got to be really relaxed, really chilled out at the table, talk to people who want to talk to us. If you don't, no problem. It's your Saturday. What are we going to do?
So we're out here on another Saturday, spreading truth, as usual. It's lots of fun. People are very receptive. It's good. We're moving a lot of product.
For people trying to get the word out, print up flyers. Flyers is a good way to go. People are not afraid to take information in flyer form, at least.
Get yourself a sheet of paper and educate yourself. That's all we're asking you to do.
That's always a good way to go. Burn DVDs, make copies of flyers.
We were flyering cars. On Sunday we got a building. Went to the top, flyered our way down. We're out of flyers. Took us about 15 minutes, 20 minutes to flyer that building, and we were out. So
Great, man.
that was easy.
We're doing good because my brother and I going door to door, talking to people.
We're giving out tons of flyers in the streets. We've also taken it to flyering cars. And we're doing things like we're going through parking garages. We're going on the streets.
Here with the ostrich hunter, we got these vaccine ingredient lists here. We're gonna put up about eye level, and we'll try to raise the ostrich's head, and we'll put these right down at the bottom of the post. Try to get their attention.
Coffee Time always has those magazine racks with lots of magazines and newspapers to slip your flyers in the paper. Don't just, you can put a stack on there, but if you actually insert them in like the top few, they'll probably get read.
Yep.
Library, same deal. Go to the library, slip them into the books.
So that's an example of sort of what worked, right? We met for lunch, as I said. We said we got to do something. We keep talking to each other, not just typing to strangers on the internet, not just leaving random comments for strangers on YouTube, not just trying to get a thumb to get respect, right? But literally talking to fellow red-pilled patriots like you saw in the video. And as we were talking to each other, and as we respected and trusted each other and developed friendships and relationships out of this, we were like, okay, so now that we're all cool with each other, we got to get out there and we got to help other people be cool when it comes to all this crap going on. And we were also dealing with the vaccine pandemic issue. We were handing out vaccine exemption forms. We were handing out posters and flyers and so on, and DVDs. And we were having organic conversations. We weren't filming this stuff for YouTube. It wasn't like filming, camera or phone or whatever, filming it and it got you, put that online, get some clicks. It wasn't that. It was there was some filming, as you can see, we filmed some of this and whatever, but that wasn't the point. That wasn't as hot back then. Going viral wasn't as hot and important as it was now. And so it wasn't about just poking strangers and saying, hey, stranger, can I show how stupid people are and put it on my channel? See how stupid people are? We weren't doing any of that crap, right? It was more like, nope, we're just proving we're cool. We're proving we're cool with each other. We're proving that, we can be cool here, in public, whatever, with our little table, with posters and flyers and DVDs and signs and an umbrella or whatever. And we're just chilling with each other. We're passing things out. We're hanging out with people. We're involved with the crowd. We're saying, here you go, thank you, as you like, just, like anybody else passing things out, flyers or whatever, or putting up posters on, say, flyering mailboxes or leaving them in public magazines or and so on. Like we were mixing it up like that. And the point is that, people were cool. They were like, meh. They're doing their thing. They seem to be nice people. They're nice to each other. They're nice to other people. They're trying to do the right thing and help people be informed and empowered. Cool. No problem. Right? So at the table, at the TTS Toronto Truth Seekers table, we made a consistent presence for that entire summer, just kind of out there. And it happened a couple of other years, as well. But we made a presence at that table, and we consistently and politely engaged with people, right? And so when it comes to oh no, you think this about that? You must be crazy. Oh no, you think this about that? You must be crazy. Oh my, you think that cutting your kids cock or boobs off is a crime, is horrible. You're crazy. It's like, no, you think cutting your kid's arm off is okay? No, you should go to jail. You think cutting your kid's cock or boobs off is okay? Yeah. So who's crazy, right? But again, people will think you're crazy until you realize you're not crazy. You're not too crazy to make a friend. You're not doing something crazy. You're not trying to act crazy. You're not a protester yelling and screaming and making a big mess in public and then, barely being able to really talk and have a conversation with people, right? And the whole point is just to express your feelings and being a big mess and ooga booga booga. That's not the point. The point is, no, we just proud, polite Canadian patriots or polite patriots wherever you are worldwide. And we're cool, and we're just happy to be cool with you. And, we'll either chill out here, ignore you if you want to ignore us. We'll say hi if you want to say hi. We'll be handing stuff out. You want to take something, fine. You don't, fine. And you want to talk to us? Talk to us. Come on over. Cool. We'll have a conversation with you or whatever. And I've got some examples here. For example, here's a little flyer that says, "Don't get shot." Right? So you can read that. Now this little 1 by 3 inch piece of paper, right? So people aren't too scared to take this, right? Now, if you get some giant thing and you give them a whole, all scared or whatever, oh, no, thanks. But when it's like this, here you go, thank you. People go, huh? Yeah, fine. Right? Fine. Sure, whatever. And I've said to tons of people, hey, if you think it's smart, enjoy. If you think it's stupid, throw it out. There's tons of junk mail out there, probably tons of junk mail at your house right now. There'll be tons of junk mail delivered this week. Everybody knows that people, that this works. It's not like you're like, it doesn't work. It's, that's so stupid, man. Just tweet to your friends on the internet while Twitter censors it. Or make YouTube videos while YouTube kicks you off. So go to BitChute where only people who agree with you are. And so all the new people can't understand. And you have confused civilians and you got pissed off patriots. They're pissed off patriots, pissed off and bitching to each other about how confused the civilians are. And the civilians keep getting more confused and making it harder to talk to people they disagree with and each other, especially the pissed off patriots. The pissed off patriots, I'd be like, well, I don't want to be weird and make them more uncomfortable, so I better not say anything. And then I got to go back on the internet and start bitching to people who agree with me again. Like that's the matrix cycle that we're trapped in, as opposed to the Fight Club cycle, which is get together, think, talk, fight for where you live, boom, get out there, right? So that's one example, of a little thing. And I've said to a lot of people, like I said, it's smart, enjoy, stupid, throw it out. You're gonna run into tons of crap like this, right? You might get a little coupon. Somebody's handing out coupons, free hair, free, buy one Brazilian wax, get one free. You take it, you just grab it from someone. You're like, huh? I don't need this shit. Fine. Or you're like, oh, maybe I'll check it out. Right? And we had thousands of grateful parents rushing to our table there, because they were worried their kids were going to get the experimental swine flu, bird flu, whatever shot. And we had thousands of parents coming to our table. Are you the guys with the vaccine exemption forms? Can I have 2, please? Thank you. Oh, can I have 2 for my cousin, please? Sure. We had a whole bunch of photocopies. Take them, right? There's another example, right? Slightly bigger, right? Here's another example, right? There's a whole bunch of others. There's some Canadian truth dollars printed up by somebody, made by somebody, template to hand out offline. There is a classic 9/11 truth dollar, right? Websites on it and so on, some information you can check out. Here's classic DVDs, climate change dangers, right? The vaccine agenda, right? Some people still have DVD players, a lot of people don't. You can direct them to websites or whatever. There's, if we don't know, we have problems. If we do know, we have solutions, right? Another example, right? And so, there's all these options out there to stop the sort of mass zombification process going on, right? And so, the meetings, meet and greet tables, for example, posters and flyers, and then a bunch of guys, myself and others, as you saw in that video, typically more of a male thing. There were some girls with us as well there, some of the girls who are into it, right? Don't have to be, definitely more of a male thing to do, but the chicks that are into it, you don't want to stop them. The chicks that can do it, like, you don't want to stop them. But the chicks that don't want to, that's okay. Guys got to take care of this shit, right? And so, me and some of the guys, we'd load up our backpacks full of flyers, and we'd be hitting cars, hitting windshields, slapping them up here, slapping them up there, moving in packs of, 4 guys, or 2, 3, 4, 5 guys, 6 guys, moving in packs throughout the city, trying to make sure that everybody had a chance to at least see the other side. If you like it, enjoy it. You think it's stupid, throw it out, forget it. You're going to see a stupid commercial, a stupid flyer, a stupid poster, a stupid video, a stupid something. If it is just that stupid, laugh at it. Laugh at it. This is stupid. Gone. Smart? This is good. Helps. Done. Right? And so that's basically the answer. And it's been going on for thousands of years. For thousands of years, there's been the online information war is only recent. The offline information war used to have people walking around. Maybe there'd be an eclipse. The moon goes over the sun. Everyone's freaking out. We should kill all our babies. Kill all our babies so the sun comes back and the evil and God doesn't eat the sun. And just somebody walking around. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. I think this will be cool. I think we just give it a little bit of time, and then once the moon, moves past the sun, we'll see it again. Don't kill all your babies, right? And it would just be some dudes walking around saying that, right? Some smart dudes, some whatever dudes. No, bad idea. Don't do that, right? And then you had the apple crates or speakers' corners that came up. Apple crate in the middle of town. We think the king should build a bridge over that river so we can go get berries, And people would take turns in the middle of town standing on an apple crate talking about, what they feel, how they feel, what they believe things should be. And people walking by would stop and listen or just keep going. Or if they didn't like them, they'd take some rotten fruit and throw it at them, right? Get them off there. Or yet that turned into speaker's corner. Before the American Revolution, they had committees of correspondence where they wrote letters to each other. They put up bills, they put up posters, they passed on newsletters and information. They made sure everyone was informed and empowered so that when they had to act, it was easy to act, right? And even more recently, stuff like this has gone on. So this is very different from the "we're really mad, we already know, we're really mad, we already know kind of protest model that's sold out there. And that's why I want to share it. Now, I don't think they're all bad. The protest model is all bad because it can feel good to realize there's, 10,000 people that, share the same feelings as you. But if those 10,000 people, or even 1,000 people, or even say 300 people, like in that movie 300, where it took 300 people to take on 1,000,000 people, and they fight them off or whatever, blah 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 blah, and that movie about the Persian attack on the 300 army of This Is Sparta, that famous movie, it would only take 300 people, 300 men especially, right? It would only take 300 men to take a city, right? I guarantee you, if you give me 300 men, Toronto's done. Everyone in Toronto, informed, empowered, cool. Someone's a mess. You're not just a mess too, you fix them, right? You're a mess, someone fixes you. Done. Over. Finished. Right? And you give me 300 men, and anybody, you give somebody else 300 men, right? You got to have some talent, some skill, some leadership ability, but you could take New York, 300 men. 300 men, it would take you 6 months to a year. Done. 300 men. You could take Los Angeles. It's got 13 million people there. 300 men. Done. Right? Chicago, 300 men. Done. Paris, France, 300 men. Done. London, England, 300 men. Done. Done, done, done. That's all it would take. 300 men. That's it. Now, you can get 3,000 or 30,000 or 300,000 to get out to a protest and all there. Hey, we all feel this way. This is good. It's good to go out on a nice day saying we all feel this way. It's good to go out on a nice day and say we all feel this way. Totally cool. It is good to know that many people feel this way. But then what? You all feel this way. It's cool. And then you go home. And the other 3 million people where you live, meh. Practically clueless. Right? The people watching the videos, if the media even covers you or covers you fairly, right, might, if the media covers you or covers you fairly, that could help, right? If the independent media covers you, then it's a lot of the same 300,000 people or whatever that already feel that way. Now, you will reach some new people. I'm not saying it's all bad, but I'm just saying there's a superior model out there that's already been tried and tested and proven. We're not the only people who've done it, but I think we're among the more successful people and among the more technically capable people that have done it. And since then, a lot of things have gone on that have made it much more difficult. But the bottom line is, anywhere in the world, it's possible to do this. And there you have it. So I wanted to make that clear, right? Because, this video is called David Menzies, Robo-Cops, protesters who yell but can't talk, make you one too. And what can you do? And that's what you can do. And hopefully this helps you. And you help other people where you live and are helped by other people too. So there you have it. Anyway, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, share, get in touch with questions, answers, ways to work together, or financial support, all very much needed for these types of efforts. And feel free to use any clips of these videos. You can post the videos or chop up any clips and use them for your own videos and whatever. I wouldn't mind if you let me know, because I think it's kind of flattering and cool. Maybe build a connection there as you'd like. And otherwise, Black Krishna or BK from manforwars.com. Hope this helps, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.